Hey, today I'm going to analyze the game Magnus Carlsen against Peter Svidler, which was played in the last round of the Candidates Tournament in London. And this game was really important because before the round, Vladimir Kramnik and Magnus Carlsen had the same amount of points. So a win would definitely be helpful in the last round for both players. And actually in the case of both winning their games, Vladimir Kramnik was playing against Vasily Ivanchuk, Carlsen would have won the tournament. So let's get right into it. Carlsen was white and started with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. We see a Spanish game here, bishop a4, knight f6, castle, bishop e7. And as usually when Carlsen plays his openings, it's not really exciting. He doesn't come up with strong novelties or long lines. He normally goes for a quiet variation. He tries to get an equal position out of the opening and then wants to outplay his opponent from there. So here we also see not too much exciting stuff. He goes for d3, which is quite a quiet line. b5, bishop b3, d6. Now black threats a little bit to play knight a5 and exchange the bishop b3, which is why Carlsen plays a3. Castle, knight c3, bishop b7. All normal development moves. Bishop d2, queen d7, completely normal, connecting the rooks. And now Carlsen tries to do something on the queen side, a4. And here are certainly many options for black. Could also play knight a5, maybe b4, but Svidler goes for knight d8 with the idea to place his knight on e6, which is normally a good position for a knight in this opening. Carlsen now exchanges some pieces, and it seems the position simplified a little bit, but in the Royal Lopez, in this opening, the positions still remain pretty complex, and this is exactly what Carlsen aimed for. He wanted to have an equal position, but it should be complex, so he could try to outplay his opponent. Knight e2. Carlsen is also regrouping his knight, going to g3, and maybe later aiming to go to f5. Knight e6, knight g3. And now Svidler played c5. He could also have avoided knight f5 by playing g6. I don't know why he didn't play this. Maybe he didn't want to allow bishop h6. I'm not completely sure. But g6 was definitely also a move worth of consideration. c5, knight f5. And now Svidler doesn't want to give his bishop away on e7, so he plays bishop d8. Also possible, by the way, was c4, which would have further simplified the position, I guess. And this position is also completely okay for black because he has the center pawns, but on the other hand, white has the bishop here, so it's kind of equal. Bishop d8. And now there's still a threat of c4 in the air, so Carlsen prevents it by playing himself c4. He takes c4, bishop takes c4, bishop c7, rook e1, a useful move. Rook is always better on e1 than on f1, obviously. Rook e8, Svidler does the same. And now queen c1. Carlsen tries to do some actions on the king side and maybe preparing bishop g5 or even bishop h6 in some variations. Svidler played knight h5 to kind of prevent bishop h6 and bishop g5, and also trying to go to f4. In the press conference, Svidler mentioned that he calculate d5, but it's not working because of b takes d5, knight d4, knight takes d4, c takes d4. Now we see the benefit of the queen on c1. White can take on g7 and get a really strong attack. And white is winning. Knight h5. And Carlsen, on the other hand, Svidler didn't do it, but Carlsen prevented that a knight would come to f4 by playing g3 himself. There was another possibility though, b4, also interesting, which gives white maybe a slight edge. He can further maybe increase the pressure on d6 with queen a3, but certainly it's not really a lot, and Carlsen was playing for a win. So he goes for g3. Now Svidler played g6, knight h6 check, king g7, and here again b4 was interesting. Carlsen played knight g5. There was also the option of knight takes f7. The idea is that after a few exchanges here, now we have position with rook and pawn against two pieces, which is normally favoring the side with two pieces. Okay, obviously it always depends on position, but here white can continue with b4, and maybe it's slightly better for white. Knight g5 is pretty aggressive. Okay, obviously black can't take on h6. White would just take on e6, which would be soon mate. So black takes, and now the pawn on f7 is hanging, so black has to do something about it, and he goes for d5. Now finally, white takes, and now bishop takes d5. Yeah, this was maybe the first really critical position of the game. Carlsen played now knight g4, which is not a bad move, but from a practical point of view, it might have been better for him to play bishop takes d5 followed by knight g4, because it takes away this really strong bishop from the long diagonal. And here white just has a slight advantage, but he's definitely less at risk to lose the game, because losing the game for Carlsen would be like the worst case. Then Kramnik would only need a draw to win the tournament. And Carlsen was also getting short on time, so it would have been definitely a better decision to go for this line, I think. Knight g4, and now Svidler played bishop f3, which is a good move, but there was even a better one. After bishop f3, white can still achieve a slight advantage. First of all, let's see, can black take on g4? He can, of course, but white just first maybe checks on h6 and then takes the bishop and gets this really strong bishop, and now has himself a really strong light squared bishop. So this is definitely good for white. The move which was stronger than bishop f3 was actually bishop a8, going all the way back. Svidler mentioned in the analyze that he analyzed bishop b7. Bishop b7 is not as strong as, is actually worse than bishop a8, and we will see why. So there's the idea of bishop f6 check, and black can't take because of queen h6 check, and white takes on f6, so he has to go back. King g8, and now queen g5, and this was what Svidler was afraid of, and looks really dangerous here, but it's really concrete actually. Queen c6, threatening mate himself now. Rook e4, queen b6, and now bishop e7, and the line continues with queen takes b2, and here now the whole point can be seen why Black played bishop a8, so he can now play all the way back queen b7, threaten mate again. And now actually white has to go for a draw with, knight f6, knight takes f6, bishop takes f7, king takes, queen takes f6, king g8, queen e6, and it's a perpetual check. Okay, but obviously this is really difficult to calculate, and bishop f3 is probably the better practical choice. Bishop f6. Yes, mentioned before, Black can't take because then the queen would enter here and that would be mate in the next move. So king g8, knight h6 check, king f8. And maybe Carlsen overestimated this position. It looks really good. All the white pieces are aiming at the Black king, and it looks really good. But okay, now the bishop is hanged, so white played queen e3, also attacking himself, the bishop on f3. And now Svidler played a strong move, bishop b7. Yeah, if Black takes on f6, everything would be fine. White just takes back here, threatens f6, pawn on f7 would still hang. So this would be perfectly fine, but bishop b7 is a strong move. And now white has to do something about the bishop on f6. He can't take on c5. It would be check, but Black would just play bishop d6 and still the bishop would hang on f6. So he has to do something. And Carlsen played bishop h4. And this is a mistake. Indeed, the really unhuman move, bishop h8, would have been the strongest. The problem of bishop on h4 is that he will be getting under attack later, as we will see. The bishop won't get under attack on h8, and he's not really trapped because the knight on h6 prevents any attacks on the bishop. So it could go on with queen c6, threatening mate, f3. And now Black has to do something about the pawn on f7. So he plays rook e7, and now rook f1. And the position remains pretty complex, and who knows what would have happened here in time trouble. But from an objective point of view, this would have been the better continuation. Bishop h4 and queen h3. And now suddenly Black is attacking himself, doing a counter-attack. And now it was really getting a problem that Carlsen was short on time. I don't know how much time he exactly had here, but it was not enough. Maybe otherwise he would have found a really strong move, bishop d5. I'm pretty sure he calculated this move, but the variations are kind of deep. Bishop takes d5, queen takes c5 check, king g7, queen takes d5, and this is the problem, the knight is hanging on h6. So queen takes f7, which is now a double attack, and rook and bishop. And if the queen goes back with queen c8, white just plays rook c1. So rook c8, and now bishop e7, further continuing the attack on the king. And Black has nothing better than queen f5. And now white can exploit the pin here and win back or attack the bishop once again, and he achieves this endgame with 2 pawns and rook against 2 minor pieces, and this is better for white, or at least one can be sure that Carlsen would not lose this position. After f3, on the other hand, he gets into a worse position because Black can further increase his attack with knight f4. G takes f4 was again not the best move, and Carlsen gets further into trouble. Better would have been queen f2, and then Black should go for the endgame here, queen takes h4. One has to notice that queen takes c5 check is countered by queen e7, and Black is fine. And after g takes h4, knight h3, king g2, knight takes f2, king takes f2, bishop d8. Black is better, but it's not that much yet. White can still hold on probably here. At least better chance than in the game. G takes f4. Queen takes h4. And now knight takes f7. The knight is hanging. And to take here with check would not really help. Black would just play rook e7, and then also the rook on e1 would hang, so this would not help. Knight takes, and bishop takes f3. This is the whole problem. And suddenly Black's attack is getting really strong, and Carlsen, at some point he had like 10 seconds for 6 or 8 moves, so it was really exciting, and of course really difficult to play for him. So he played queen f2, queen g4 check, and now again king f1 would have been better, but okay. Queen g3, and now Svidler goes into the endgame, which is clearly better for him, maybe even already winning, probably already winning. Check, king takes, bishop takes. So we see an endgame, Black has a bishop pair and is a pawn up. So this is clearly favoring Black. Knight g5. Carlsen was had still maybe 4 seconds left here. h6, knight f7, h5, knight h6. And now even the white knight is kind of in trouble here, because bishop f7 does not work because of king f8, bishop takes g6, king g7, and both pieces are attacked and white will lose one of them. King f2, f3, also taking pawn h2, so Carlsen played h3, but position is kind of hopeless here. Bishop f4, knight f7, and now Black just pushes his pawn g5, king e1, and just goes on, and the pawn cannot be stopped. Because the bishop is perfectly dominating the knight here in f7, and this bishop cannot really do anything either. So king e1, g2, king f2, and now bishop h2, and it's over. Black will promote a queen, the next move obviously is winning. So Carlsen resigned, but Vladimir Kramnik also lost his game against Vasily Ivanchuk, which meant that both players, Carlsen and Kramnik, ended up with the same amount of points, and Carlsen won the tournament due to the fact that he had more wins. I think Carlsen had 5 or 6 wins, and Kramnik had 1 less. So Carlsen is going to be the challenger of the world champion Viswanathan Anand, either this fall, I'm not sure, or next year. Yeah, so far so good. I see you in the next video. Bye.